Welcome to Ukraine Insights, the podcast about undercurrents of business and politics, where we bring you in-depth analysis and conversations with those who know Ukraine best. Brought to you by KI Insights. Welcome from a very frosty Kiev today. In solidarity with the poor people at Davos, we're keeping the temperature roughly at about 0 at the moment, so we can commiserate with them. I'm joined today by our senior political analyst, Anatoliy Oktysiuk. Anatoly, thank you for joining us. The topic that we wanted to talk about today is the global order is being upended. The first year of Trump 2 was already turbulent, to say the least. It looks like the second year is starting off with an even greater bang. We have crises in Venezuela, Iran, Greenland, to name just but a few. And the question is, how does Ukraine find itself in this new world order, which is being built before our very eyes? So to start with the most pressing issue, the transatlantic relationship is at its worst since the end of the Second World War. We have an unprecedented crisis in Greenland. So far, it's not really what has happened, but rather the escalation that is possible and in fact even likely to happen. How does Ukraine view the risks of a Greenland escalation?
Well, the scenarios are bad for Ukraine. Like Ukrainian elites, political leadership of Ukraine, they're realizing that this crazy storm is affecting very negatively on Ukrainian allies in Europe, because so many my contacts and my sources, they believes that Trump is playing much more sophisticated game around Greenland. They think that this is the element of making pressure on key Ukrainian partners in Europe in order to reduce their pressure on Russia. So it could be an element of exchange interests. For instance, guys, you are not making much more pressure against Russia. You are lifting sanctions against Russia, reducing probably support and pushing Kyiv for a new peace deal with Russia, and I am stepping back from Greenland. So it could be the element of the strategy of the Trump, and we're afraid of that strategy because all our main partners in Europe are involved in this crisis. So all geopolitical, even military, financial focus now is concentrated on Greenland, how to keep this territory in so-called old order, transatlantic order. But the Trump, at the same time, he is ruining that connections between allies in Europe. Yes, this is another story that he will risking to lose American influence in Europe. This is another story. But in Ukrainian case, we are risking to lose European support, because we believe that for Europe, much more crucial American support, American presence than Ukraine.
So this is a very interesting theory, and maybe just to take it back a little bit, I think our sort of leading hypothesis at KI Insights, since very early on in the Trump 2 presidency, has been that the goal is essentially to establish a new sort of global consensus, whether you call it a Yalta 2.0, a G2, or a G2.5, because it's not just about the US, it's also about China and Russia, where essentially Trump is building a multipolar world with zones of influence and sectoral areas of influence. I think that's also an important distinction. In the first year of his presidency, the way that he was trying to build that was by first peeling off Russia from China, so giving Russia strategic autonomy, securing a deal with Russia that would be focused on security issues, on economic issues, not necessarily making Russia an ally, but at least making them independent of China, and thereby being able to negotiate a better deal with China. We saw Trump meet with Xi at the end of last year. That meeting sort of was a a win, a soft win for Xi probably, but most importantly, they kicked the final negotiations down the road. And what we see now is Trump being much more proactive, much more fluid, maniacal, sort of unstable in his strategy. But he's basically aiming for the same thing: is to negotiate this sort of division of the world. But the question is on what terms. And to bring it back to Greenland and Ukraine, essentially, the problem in his first year was that Ukraine was a roadblock to getting a deal with Russia. And the reason that Ukraine could be a roadblock is because of European support, military support, economic support, and the fact that, very importantly, Europe holds Russia's frozen assets and is the key sort of to the sanctions on Russia. So,
Exactly.
I mean, US is very important, of course, but Europe is actually the more important player there. So Europe has a veto power over a deal that would be favorable to the Russia and to the US. And so now the theory is Greenland, which came out sort of out of nowhere. I'm not sure to what extent it was planned. Maybe it was just accidental, but it's now being used. It's creating this sort of pressure point against Europe that might be used to force Europe to essentially say, okay, we're not going to send peacekeepers to Europe. We're going to agree to lift sanctions on Russia, and we're going to give Russia a portion of its frozen assets back. Of course, another piece goes to the US because Trump always sees his own interest or the US interest in every deal. But is that sort of the deal that we're talking about?
Yes. In this way, Trump may compromise, like a little bit. But the global idea is to like engage Russia in European policy, like to put Russians on the negotiation table. And the problem, like we see also the switching of some European narratives, like you know what Friedrich Merz says, like we have to return back Russia. But this is also mainly, we believe that this is mainly connected with American pressure. Yeah. So Ukraine is an obstacle for Trump's big game plan. Yeah. So we are obstacle for him. Because, you know, our resistance and our, like in general, like possibility to resist against Russia, it's a huge, like, block of Trump's plan in Europe in general. And for Europeans now, it's a big also like a challenge, what way to choose, like to escalate with Americans, like with tariffs, with security and so on. So you see what Germans did with their like so-called military troops on Greenland. They refused immediately. Like what's American says for them? Like, probably we will evacuate American troops from Germany or from Eastern Flank or something like that. So too many cars. Like in this way, like what the Trump likes to say, I have like cars on my hands. Yes. Americans, Europeans, they don't have cars on their hands.
Well, I mean that's not entirely true because Europe does hold a lot of American
trade,
assets,
economy,
right?
Exactly, bonds and so on.
The financial connection between New York and London is probably the pillar of the global economy. So that actually threatening that is kind of a nuclear weapon, but that do at both sides. I mean, like it's a disaster for both sides. But I think the point here is that for Europe, I mean, this is an existential threat in terms of Europe's sovereignty. So we could very easily see an escalation where Europe says, well, no. I mean, this is the red line. And, we understand what is happening because very consistently throughout his second term, the Trump administration has been trying to divide and diminish European influence. Like this is I think there's no
split, divide and rule.
Exactly, right? And so this is something, I think for a lot of Europeans, this is a make or break moment. There's a question about, will all European countries actually go along? If we do see an escalation, if we do see tariffs, potentially even going into sort of the military space, do all sort of countries stay along? And I will tell you quite frankly,
no.
Looking at some of the debates that are happening, whether it's on Polish Twitter or within sort of Italy or Austria, Hungary is already, I mean, like in the other camp very consistently.
Italy, maybe.
the feelings are very mixed, right, about what should be the strategy, and there's some people who believe that it's important to stay with the U.S. and others who say, well, no, maybe the U.S. is not great now, but let's not antagonize them. Let's wait at least until the end of Trump's term, and then we can sort of try to rebuild the transatlantic partnership.
But it looks very strange because in this concept, China looks much more predictable and more reliable global partner than Americans now.
Absolutely.
At least despite all this economic stuff and ideology and so on, in terms of clashing Chinese American interests in global way, China respecting more international law, UN, and so on, because all this stuff what Trump is doing, it's burning a huge chaos, and it's killing international order at all.
Yes, absolutely. So
we are living in this new so-called world since 2014. And mainly Ukrainian elites and expert society, they said, okay, we are not impressed because we are living in this crazy world latest 10 years. It's a huge stress for Europe. It's a huge stress for Western democracies. But the problem is that we have to understood global and final destination of Trump's. Yeah. For my opinion, he wants to build own political dynasty in America. He wants to keep power. After his second candidacy, someone have to run, and he is making personal assets. He is improving influence inside of US. Yeah. The second, he is I'm agree fully with you. He is dividing, splitting, and ruling, sphere of interest. And the third stuff, he is would like to fully destroy all institutions. This so-called peace council, this is demonstration of that he hates all these institutions. He hates.
It's clearly aimed at destroying the UN and the sort of the international system that is based on that and setting up an alternative. Dear listeners, if you're looking for more of our content, make sure to check out our website where you will find all of our services along with our weekly analyses. You can also join our monthly briefs and follow us on X, Blue Sky, and LinkedIn for fresh updates.
Yes, right? So this is the three bases what we see. He's the personal goals, and he would like to achieve that. And yeah, Western democracy have to realize that he loves more bad guys than democracies, because it's very easily to make a deal with bad guys. You can make a deal with them in one day. So in the democracies, it doesn't work like this. You have to conduct the consultations and so on.
Absolutely, and I think sort of just so if we look sort of out at the global picture, which I think you painted very, very aptly, that this is essentially what's happening. I think one thing that's worth mentioning as well is the situation of Canada, because Canada has also been an important partner and ally for Ukraine throughout this time. And while Greenland might be aimed at delivering leverage against Europe, it is also, I think, certainly aimed at delivering leverage against Canada, which has already increased. And this is also one of the things that we have sort of been looking at for a while now. By sort of going in and essentially taking over Venezuela, getting access to heavy crude from Venezuela. This is a way to sort of say to Canada, hey, we can replace some of the heavy crude that we've been getting from you, and we're no longer as... So the pressure there is also going to increase. So if we look globally...
He will start the trade war against Canada. I am pretty sure in that. Yeah. So, and Canada will suffer a lot from Trump's policy.
So exactly. So if we look coming back to Ukraine, so we have crises in Latin America, in the Arctic region with both Greenland and Canada. We have a sort of a rolling series of crises in the Middle East with Israel and Iran, as well as other actors. And then, of course, we shouldn't forget about Taiwan down the line. How does this influence Ukraine's position? Where are the risks for Ukraine from this kind of multi-crisis expanding?
Oh, first of all, it's a global focus. Globally, Ukrainian issue was the the recent 4 years. Like 3 years was in the focus of all these like global developments in terms of security, war, and other stuff. Like now we see that the focus is changing. Like honestly, our war became very boring for many international observers because it's like it's became routine.
It's now become attritional, more predictable.
Very
People don't
routine,
see- yeah,
very
okay.
routine, no dynamic. Like the Russians, they are stocked on Donbass and everywhere. Yes, we are losing this war, but in general, it's a draw. It's a draw. Yes, we are suffering. We are frozen. Like this is some changes. The hardest humanitarian crisis in Kiev and in the big cities. But in general, like international audience, they are focusing on the new developments. So we are losing this international focus of.
So this is very similar to what happened after October 7 in Israel, right? So and we saw that in multiple ways, whether it was global attention, funding, diplomatic resources that were being allocated. A lot of that got soaken up by Israel, and because of this, I mean, this impacted the dynamics in Ukraine. I think now we're looking at something that could potentially be exponentially worse because we have all of these multiple crises. The core partners of Ukraine that continue to support Ukraine, which is Canada, Europe. Then I think we should also not forget, Japan, Australia, who are also important partners here. They all have their own crises blooming in their own background. So for Ukraine, that means risks to funding. Thanks goodness the EU has actually approved quite a bit of this, so probably there's a bit of runway. Risks in terms of availability of weapons. There's a question about how much more weapon sales there will be. Intelligence sharing. This is probably the most sensitive issue for Ukraine, access to American satellite information. Are there any other risks that for Ukraine or
the main risk? This is like solidarity, international solidarity. You're right. Everyone is busy with own problems, and these problems is created also by Trump. I mean, especially for Europe, for our main Western partners, he is shaking and disturbing own allies. So this is a big problem for us. The main issue for Ukrainian leadership, we are feeling that European partners, like international partners, they are not making any pressure on Russia. So they just keep them alone, and they are doing own stuff, very nasty job, and we feel it. They are very successful in that. If we comparing what was 2 years ago, it was completely different. Pressure on foreign business which are working in Russia, sanctions, activities on international level, and so on.
I think you're right, but just to sort of quibble with that a little bit, I think there is one important dynamic that we need to remember, which is that Trump has, for better or worse, and I think it's actually for better in this case, put quite a bit of pressure on the Russian oil economy, right? Whether it's by pushing Saudi Arabia and the US to continue production, even though economically it would probably be better for the oil companies to have a slightly higher price and lower supply. As well as now the seizure of tankers, something which, by the way, I think it's important to note that this has been spurred on and enabled by the United Kingdom as well. I think that the United Kingdom had a significant role in making that happen, but it has happened. So there is a pressure point on Russia. The way that I read it, and I'd be curious to hear if you agree, I think Trump wants to deal with Russia. He really wants to deal with Russia. He wants the economic aspect, the minerals aspect, to carve up the Arctic together, to be able to have leverage against China together. But he also wants a good deal. It's not that maybe I'm being a bit naive here, but I don't think he's pro-Russian in the sense of he wants Russia to succeed. I think he wants to use Russia.
He's very pragmatic.
He's very pragmatic. So he also knows that he needs to have some stick versus Russia to get Russia to agree to a deal that, frankly, is very pro-Russian already. But still, the oil part is kind of there. One question that or sort of 2 points that I'm curious about. Russia, amidst all of these global crises, does it also get affected? Because I think that it might not also be that great for Russia.
Well, yes, partly yes, because if you take a look strategically on relations, especially with China, if this turbulence will over and this crisis it's in Europe will burn out, something happened with China between Russia, because this is what also we spoke with our team. In China is growing up a new class of young elites. They are very nationalistic. They are very hawkish. They are very, I would say, radical, relevantly. It's not that old Chinese elites which are respecting Russia, respecting Soviet Union, and so on, so on. Yeah. So the territorial issue and these territorial borders are very important, even for Ukraine, because why is Greenland we afraid of Greenland issue? Because if Americans somehow took the Greenland, or I don't know, or make annexation, or will buy, or doesn't matter, or just occupy, it will be a new reality in Western world. Yeah. So then finally we will forget about Crimea and the Donbas, etc. Because if America will change in territorial integrity of democratic states, what to speak about authoritarian states like Russia and so on, so on. So this is the biggest threat for us. In general, Russia is also very suffering from this order, because for them, if you take a look on the Russian reaction on Venezuela, on Iran, etc., they you are broken the world order, and so guys, what are you doing recent 10 years? Yeah. They was very angry on that, because it's a rule of big guy. So if I am strong, if I have big army and economy, I can do whatever I want.
I think Russia might find out that its partners its partner in the US and in China are not as nice as they were hoping, because they're losing influence in Venezuela, in the Middle East, and everywhere. Trump commented on what's happening in Ukraine, comparing it to what happened in Venezuela, that this war is very primitive, where Russia is not able to deliver the kind of...
Guys, this is SVO, 3 hours and done, and you escape, you fulfill your goals.
Exactly, you kidnap the leader, and boom, done. You work with the regime. So I think for Russia this is quite risky. Final point, and I think we're the temperature is probably going to close us down this time. It's very cold. There is also an opportunity here. I think one thing that has popped up recently in discussions in Europe. It's been a trend for a while, but especially now. Europe needs to beef up militarily in security terms. It needs to take its defense very seriously. There is one large, experienced army on the continent, and that is Ukraine. It's one of the largest. Is by far the most experienced. Basically battlefield knowledge of what works, what doesn't work in modern warfare. What are your thoughts on potentially Ukraine being fast-tracked within a European, whether it's the political union with the EU or potentially a European NATO? Is this an opportunity?
This is opportunity to create own European architecture of security. So this is the unique chance to, we have coalition of willingness and so on, or we have another step of European integration. You have joint market, Euro, joint foreign policy, and the next, final element step of the European integration could be own European army with Ukraine. And probably this is the biggest added value what we can provide for Europeans. This is the security. This is 1 million army and possibility to like protect Europe from the Russia, or at least like to make influence on them. And this is the unique chance how to
And America.
yeah, and America, yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, to make a transition of EU, this is the unique chance. Like, and if we realize that together with Europeans, they already understanding that, it could be a very great chance for Europe to become individual player in this like crazy world. Because honestly, we are bigger than than US. We are like in terms of population, in terms of economy, in terms of like influence on our neighbors, like in Africa, in Central Asia.
Europe as a whole is a very.
We have a huge potential. So, but we have to make a strategy for Trump, like Ukraine. Like this is the key. Who like have to open Russian lock, which is protecting Chinese doors.
Yes.
This is also the Trump's strategy. He doesn't care what happened then with Europe. This is like Korean model. What he proposed, yes, the part of the land will be occupied, but the rest of Ukraine supposed to be part of Europe with like prosperity and something like that. So this is the very primitive strategy, but like we have to realize the final destination of Trump. And European leadership, especially like British, Germans, and France, and like Poland, like the biggest European countries, they have to create own agenda. Like, and I think they are understanding that America is not like old America.
It's certainly an existential moment. I think there is it is really, the coming days, and probably by the time this is out, we'll have heard some wild statements coming out of Davos. But certainly, I think this is a very decisive, historic moment. As Lenin used to say, there's weeks when decades happen. I feel like this has been happening for a while, but we're certainly in that period again. So we'll see how this plays out. I think Ukraine really has one of the stronger teams at the moment, actually, to work in this direction. At least the priorities that have been set out by the new head of the office of the president, Kirill Budanov, the new minister of defense, Mikhailo Fedorov, and the minister of energy, Denis Shmyhal, also deputy prime minister and former prime minister. It feels like this is a fairly competent team to tackle some of the biggest challenges. Their priorities: mobilization, manpower, transforming the army, the energy system. It's a bit late, but how do you feel? Just to sort of close things up.
Zelensky finally has realized that this Yermak's system doesn't work. Like, it doesn't work. It was on one moment it was efficient when you have to make fast decisions. It was good for very fast track of war, but like in terms of long-term planning, in terms of like making very vital strategy, fight against Russia for many years, it was like
it was very reactive.
It was very reactive.
Yeah.
Now Zelensky and Ukrainian officials, they are like trying to rebuild a strategy, because before that it was the strategy like to stay one day more than Russia, or do not collapse before than Russia. But
that's
this
still
is
the strategy.
It's still it's still, and we feel that.
Yes.
We feel that, but we are getting stronger. Like if we have long-term strategy, like everywhere, in terms of manpower, in terms of like concentration of resources, in terms of mobilizing our like own institutional potential, and so on. Budanov, he like yes, we the last time what we spoke, yes, he's rebuilding the war cabinet, but at the same time this peace track is on the table. And I guess when Trump will play more with Greenland, Venezuela, Iran, he will return back to Ukrainian issues, I guess, in upcoming weeks. It's Ukrainian says, okay, we are happy that he is busy with Venezuela and in Iran.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have time for. Anatoly, thank you so much much for taking the time and for the discussion amidst these Arctic conditions,
Greenland conditions.
and yes, best of hope for Ukraine to navigate these troubled waters.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you enjoy Ukraine Insights, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend or colleague who follows developments in Ukraine. Your support helps us bring independent voices and informed perspectives to a global audience.